Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sinai Temple and to Church of the Good Shepherd. Just 1.4 miles away from the doors where I sit here at Sinai Temple. I'm honored to host my friend and colleague, Father Ed Benioff of Church of the Good Shepherd. How are you, Father?
I'm great, Rabbi. Great to be here. Thank you. Thank you to all your good people.
Yes, usually we get to see each other in person, but we've been restricted with our social distancing, so we've only been able to text. So it's actually good to see you on the camera via screen. We are excited to speak to each other, but also we're on Sinai Temple's YouTube and Facebook page. So if you are watching, you'll be able to. Oh, we lost you for a second. There we go. We'll be able to chat in some questions as we go. We're going to be speaking about religious leadership in times of pandemic, something that neither of us has either, I don't believe, experienced in our life. And we were joking as we were speaking to each other over last week, but something that we really never learned in seminary, how to be a religious leader in the time of a pandemic. So we're just going to go back and forth, and welcome to our private conversation, but we're excited to be here. So I wanted to actually introduce Father Ed by saying how we came together. I think that's an important point because almost 2 years ago in October, after the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, I received a call from a member of your church, and I had met her from a member of my synagogue. They actually worked together. And for many times, she invited me to the Church of the Good Shepherd. I just didn't have the, if you wish, time to attend. And after the shooting at the Church of the, at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, this woman called me and said that her father, the priest at Church of the Good Shepherd, wanted to come to our synagogue. And it was on that day, on that Shabbat in October, that you, Father Ed, came here to Sinai Temple and offered us words of prayer, words of comfort, words of healing. And that allowed me then to open my mind to go into your doors. And last 2 years, I have not missed a Festival of Guadalupe in the Catholic tradition, an amazing, amazing service that we can also learn from as well. But it's gone well beyond that. But we're going to back up for a moment. And I just want to ask, in terms of your church community, what does that look like right now during the pandemic when the physical doors are shut? And what are 3 challenges that perhaps you have faced in your community right now?
Sure. Before I begin, Rabbi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. And I could ask you just to speak up a little bit. Something happened on my end. I can't hear you a little bit.
Can you hear now?
If you could turn it up a little.
How's that?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, great.
There you go. Yeah. So how's our community doing? I think like a lot of people, we're suffering from isolation and fear. Because there's a lot of unknowns. And as you know, we're in a terrible economic situation where 1 in 5 adults are out of work. And then we're isolated too. So instead of being able to share our fears with people, we're kind of isolated. So, and I've talked to other doctors and therapists. So a lot of people right now are very uneasy. There's a lot of stress, a lot of fear of the unknown. So I think that's kind of the pulse of the people. And in a sense, it's kind of sad that we can't be there for our people because they need us now more than ever. But because of this pandemic, we have to isolate and stay at home. So this is a very challenging time, I think, for a lot of people.
So when you said that we have to be there more than ever, what does that look like to be there more than ever during this times when we actually cannot physically be there?
Well, as I say, that would be the ideal, but unfortunately, we're not able to. So, for example, we have our video services. We have a daily reflection. We're calling all our people. We've called every parishioner. We're letting them know we love them. We're here for them. Let us know if we can get you anything. But the reality is, just objectively, we're not able to meet all their needs because typically they would come see us and we could talk it out and kind of give them encouragement and support. And we really can't do that. So I think it's a hard time for a lot of people.
And when you talked about online worship, what does yours look like right now? And then we'll go back.
Sure, it's just a normal service. Like, you have music, readers, preaching, a ritual. It's taped. We don't actually have live stream per se. It's more just a filmed service, and it's good. But again, as I was talking to this gentleman, there's a reason why humans, we're social beings. We've congregated for thousands of years. We need to be together. We need to hug each other. We need to cry together. We need to sing together. And so as good as it is, this cyber worship, to me, it's an aberration. We really want to be together. And I think that's why, again, this is a hard time for a lot of people.
Yeah, you mentioned not being together with people. And I mean, biblically in the book of Genesis in Hebrew, lo tov liot adam levado, one of the first commandments is not to be alone. And this is, I was speaking with a psychologist, Dr. Dale Atkins. We were doing a talk last week, and she wrote a beautiful book called The Kindness Advantage. And she was speaking about places of worship that said, in fact, right now, the kind thing to do is to do exactly what we are not supposed to do, which is gather. And specifically in the religious realm. I mean, this morning I just got off a Zoom call of mourning, somebody who passed away. And I'll tell you a beautiful story. Maybe you can share if you've had a story like this within your community as well. But usually for 7 days, we would gather in somebody's home as loved ones would come, and we would share memories of loved ones. But this was a Zoom call. And what was beautiful this morning was there were people from LA, literally next door, but also from Israel and Australia. And when the service ended, they asked me to hand over the hosting responsibilities to them because they weren't done talking. They weren't done being together. I was wondering if there's any way that members are getting together virtually within your community.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of subgroups of cliques are getting together and sharing, things. But actually at Good Shepherd, I would say we're definitely an older congregation. And I would say I'm going to be 50 next year. And I would say kind of like 50 is a good range, like 50 and under. I think Americans are digitally savvy. But I think over 50, a lot of people like my parents' age, they don't readily Zoom or, FaceTime or anything kind of digital. So I think some people are doing that. I'd say the younger people, but the older people, I think they're more kind of staying at home, and kind of their TV is kind of their therapy, keeping them going.
So talking about connecting online, have you seen more people connect online or disconnect online? I'll give you my experience. Somebody who comes here every Saturday said to me, for the regulars, right, our regular parishioners, they feel the most uncomfortable because they've been uprooted. But for the people that never tune into our words, they are feeling more connected. And some people say, well, there's nothing else to do, but I'm optimistic like you usually are. And I actually like to think there's plenty to watch on that TV and YouTube. But the fact that they are tuning in, it seems like we are looking for spiritual messages. What's been your experience these last couple months?
Well, like you said, it's a mixed bag. So I'll focus on the positive first. I think some people that normally would not go into a house of worship, let's say, I'll just call them a non-believer. Let's say they're married to someone who's a believer. Maybe they're going to watch a live stream of a service because they just want to keep their spouse company. They're at home. They got nothing else to do. I think that's great. You're seeing that connectivity of, again, people that are not accustomed to worship. So that's good. That would be the positive. But like you said, I think the negative is the normal people, the congregants, there's a disconnect for them because, again, they want that social dynamic. They want to, have a cup of coffee after a service or a donut or something. They want to be with their pals and talk about life, and that's taken away from them. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Obviously, we want to focus on the positive of the people normally that we're not servicing, but I do think the rank and file, if you will, they're kind of disconnected, and they really want our state and our county to open up its houses of worships sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. And what's your thought on that?
When we're going to open?
No, I mean, just in terms when people want something that perhaps we cannot offer. I mean, in our tradition, we say pikuach nefesh, meaning to save a life, and we know that as bad as all of us want to gather together, we know that saving a life is going to be more important than the words that we say to God as we're in that room. So how have you communicated that to your
Yeah,
community?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think we know this is life and death. COVID-19 is real. It's a monster. It's deadly. Yeah, I think it's just we long for being a community, but yes, at the end of the day, we know it's just not the right time. So I think people have that discipline. You can call it deferred gratification. They're going to sacrifice now for the joy of being back in community.
I like that, the deferred gratification, because we're so used to preaching instant gratification. And I know in the religious world, deferred gratification is what it's all about. So what has gotten you through this, both personally and as a father of a spiritual community? And maybe you can share perhaps a word of scripture that has given you strength.
Yeah, it comes from the Hebrew Bible, Exodus 20, the First Commandment. Right after the Exodus, and I have it right here. I don't want to misquote it as I'm speaking to a bunch of good Jewish people.
You're usually better at quoting our Bible than us, so it's all good.
It says here, you shall have no other gods before me. You should not bow down to them and worship them. And here's the great, I love this. I am the Lord. I am a jealous God. So we think of jealousy as something bad, a negative connotation, but God is love. God is madly in love with us, and God wants that relationship so much that and he even says, it continues, this is Exodus 20 verse 4, I will punish the children for the sin of their parents to the third and fourth generation, but showing love to the 1,000 generations, those that love me and keep my commandments. So for me, what keeps me going is, although God didn't cause COVID-19, God is bringing good out of this, and his love is coming into our hearts. And I think what's getting me through it is it's allowing me to slow down, because as you can attest to as a rabbi, although we're professional God people, we can get caught up in the rat race just like anybody else and be stressed out and not have God time and time for prayer. So it's allowed me to really slow down and recognize that I serve God and God alone, as the First Commandment says. And I hope and I pray that's happening around the world, that people are slowing down, taking inventory, and realizing what's most important, which is God. So that's what gets me through all this.
Yeah, actually, so you speak about slowing down. The only thing that's sped up is my mile time, because I've had a little more time to exercise on the streets. But I really think the idea of slowing down is it's important. And we just finished the book of Leviticus this past Shabbat, this past Saturday, in synagogues around the world. And when we finish reading one of the 5 books of Moses, we say 3 words, chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek, meaning be strong, and together you will be strengthened. And we look at that as there's chazak, me, one strength, you, another strength, but that nit chazek, that we will be strengthened, is when we have that God piece right there. And I think you mentioned an important theological point that I know has come up a lot, is a theological crisis of, what is God doing to us? And I'm on your theological page right there. This is not God causing COVID-19. But in the words of a great Jewish theologian, Rabbi Harold Kushner, wrote the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People, it's this goodness that we see. I mean, there's a young woman in our congregation that said, you know what, I have more free time. I'm going to start making face shields with the 3D printer. And she asked me to ask a medical professional if they needed them. And they said yes. And just yesterday, this doctor said, does your friend have any more? And now they're making, a bunch more as well. And to see these acts of goodness and kindness come out of here, I think that's where we're really finding God. So I want to shift to something that we've done a bit together. You've taken the lead and we followed. And that's, I want to talk about Martha's Kitchen and then Feed My Poor. Maybe you can start a bit about how Martha's Kitchen began, and then I want to share a video that you just produced about what you're doing these days to help as well. So tell us about Martha's Kitchen.
So Rabbi, did you want me to talk about Martha's Kitchen or Feed My Poor? Because they're a little different.
A little different. Let's start with Martha's Kitchen, because then we'll take it from there. We got some time.
That's a good. So the foundation was about 10 years ago. Some amazing and generous people here at the Church of the Good Shepherd realized that there's a lot of homeless here on the west side, and we want to do something for them. So about 10 years ago, we started feeding the homeless every Friday morning, very early, about 6:30 a.m. And we get every Friday morning 100 to 150 homeless people. And that's been an amazing ministry. And Sinai Temple has been very generous in helping us with food and other goodies. But as you know, when COVID hit, we had to shut Martha's Kitchen down because you can't have a gathering of more than 10 people. We'd have 100 to 150. So kind of like, again, using another Hebrew Bible reference, when Elijah went around the mountain, God wasn't in the earthquake or the fire or the wind. He was in the small, still voice. And so as I was able to slow down and listen to the small, still voice, the Lord said to me, we still got to feed the homeless, but we can't have them come here. We got to go to them. And that's kind of the origin of Feed My Poor, which is kind of a break off of Martha's Kitchen. And so little by little, and really it's the generosity of everyone in the community. Now we're doing it 7 days a week. We make 500 sandwiches. And now this week we added 100 burritos a day. And it's just absolutely amazing. I give all the credit to the community because they've stepped up. We have people making sandwiches, drivers giving the food to the homeless. And then people have donated money because this cost about $10,000 a month. And we're already hurting because we don't even have a Sunday collection. So we can't take that money. So I had to beg, and thankfully a lot of people came forward. So I think this is a beautiful thing. And I thank you and your community for helping out. And I was talking, we have 2 Christian churches right next to us, All Saints Episcopal and Beverly Hills Presbyterian, and they're helping us too. So I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a neighborhood thing where all of us that believe in the one God, the same God, we want to serve his poor. And I was talking the other day to another rabbi friend of mine, and we talked about the Anaweem.
Can't have too many rabbis,
What's that?
You can't have too many rabbis.
That's right. And the Anaweem, the Aramaic is the outcast, the poor, the sick, those that don't have a voice. So to me, again, this is very biblical. This is strong in the Hebrew Bible with the prophets, the widow, the alien, the orphan. I think this is what God is trying to move us all for thousands of years is look for the forgotten people in society and then go and serve them. And I think that's what we're all doing here with Feed My Poor. So I'm very excited about it. And even when we go so-called back to normal, I want to continue this because I think this is really God's will.
So I want to share a short video that was produced by Church of the Good Shepherd to show everybody what exactly Father Ed is speaking about on a real life basis. So please watch.
Hi friends, Father Ed here in beautiful Los Angeles, California. LA is not only the entertainment capital of the world, but sadly it's the homeless capital of America. At the beginning of this COVID-19 pandemic, I went into prayer. I said, Lord, what do you want my response to be to this? And the Lord said, feed my poor. And sadly, the homeless are being neglected more than ever during this pandemic. And that's why we started this ministry, so we could feed the poor of Christ.
Feed My Poor is out every day, living chapter 25 of Matthew, where Jesus encourages us to feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty. We're trying to do those things through the acronym FAMILY, family. It means forget about me, I love you. And it's a way of life. It's an attitude. And so many of us are stuck together at home right now. So let's find ways to love one another more, be encouraging to one another more, but let's also find ways to consistently be praying for the homeless, those who have nothing, and partner with us.
We're feeding 500 people a day, and we want to continue those efforts and even ramp it up to 1,000 people today. That's why I need your help. That's why I need your support. And just know 100% of your donation will go to feeding the poor.
Check us out at feedmypoor.com. Find our Facebook page where you can like it and share it. So let's keep praying, let's keep loving, and let's become one strong family together. Check it out. Thank you.
That's amazing. How does that work? How can people get involved?
Well, if anybody in your congregation would like to get involved, they can just call us at the office, 310-285-5425, or just go to our website, and they can ask for Penny, one of our secretaries. She coordinates all the sandwich makers and the drivers. So if anyone would like to get involved, and we do this during the middle of the day from like 11 to 1 p.m. So we get together, we congregate. Of course, we follow all the CDC guidelines. We wear masks, gloves, and we practice physical distancing. But yeah, they love to. Please come on down, call the parish, or as that video showed, if they want to donate and help out. So any way is appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, just literally walking and running the neighborhood, I've seen so many more tents pop up, and not tents because people are going, camping for pleasure, but tents out of need. And just knowing that this is in place, and knowing that people of faith and belief are doing this is as you said earlier, a God moment.
Amen.
Let's just go towards the future for a few moments. Somebody asked me, what would it be like if you were graduating the seminary today and you were going into your job? In rabbinical school, you prepare 5 years to literally walk into a synagogue building and preach in front of people and shake people's hands. These graduates coming out of both rabbinical seminaries. Yesterday, I watched 2 ordinations online where even their classmates can't be together. What would you suggest advice to a young either priest or rabbi entering this world today on July 1st when they start? What would be the advice to them?
Well, I'm an optimist. I'm Joe Optimist. I'm hoping once we get a vaccine, then we can kind of go back to normal, that we don't have to live in fear. I think for the next year, or depending on, whatever science tells us, as long as we don't have a vaccine, I think we're going to have to be very guarded in everything we do. So yeah, everybody's got to be heads up to that. But yeah, I hope that, there will come a day where we can hug each other and high five and shake hands and kiss each other. I hope that's not, because I think that's very human. We're very tactile. We don't want to always, keep physical distancing. So I'm hoping this is just temporary until that vaccine. So I'm praying for that vaccine to come sooner than later.
No, so true. Going back to the Feed My Poor for a moment, have you found more parishioners coming out to volunteer than before, when it's sort of like the crucial, the regulars, if you wish? Are more people doing that because of time, because of need? What does that look like on Feed My Poor?
Great question. Well, people are restless. Like we talked earlier about, they're isolated and they're fearful. They want to get out of their house. Mm-hmm. And so we because we have to have no more than 10 people in our hall, we have to tell people, we'll schedule you. But yeah, a lot of people want to volunteer, which is amazing, because I think people want to get out and actually, it feels good. It's more blessed to give than to receive. They want to go out there and do something for somebody else. So I've just been amazed at the people. And again, I attribute all the good people out there that, we got God in like in the book of Genesis says, we're made in the image and likeness of God. It's already there. I think just like religion is kind of a reminder and helps people realize how great they are, because God is in everybody, and opportunities like this allow us to realize we got God in us already.
So if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, feel free to chat in questions, and they will be given to us so we can discuss those as well. Again, if you're watching on Sinai Temple's Facebook or Sinai Temple's YouTube, feel free to chat in, and we'll be able to answer those questions. I was going to go back to the future one more time, because as we know, we don't know the future. If we had the future, we would be probably doing something different right now. But what does that look like perhaps when we do come back? Do you have any changes in terms of worship, in terms of integrating parishioners in a different way than you saw before? A just article came out in the Forward. It's the Jewish national newspaper that said, for instance, today's article was, will denominations be different, right? Because we're losing sort of our own identity and we're coming together. What do you see in the Catholic and Christian world being perhaps different, or questions that were being asked in terms of innovation that perhaps will be pushed forward a little more after we come back together?
Did you mean specifically like safety innovations?
No, I mean innovations in religion and prayer. Do you see the Catholic Church looking different, acting different after we've come through this type of pandemic? These types of pandemics are usually times for transformations in religious.
Yeah. I'm hoping and praying that the kindness, the thoughtfulness, the generosity, the tender mercy that we're seeing, I hope that, and it happens in all faiths, I hope that continues and increases. So yes, I agree. I hope we're not the same. I hope we don't go back to normal in that sense. I hope we're better, we're more filled with God, and hopefully we have more of a purpose, that we know, like I said earlier, what's most important in our life, God. And hopefully we live by God's grace, and we want to please God every day. So yes, I'm hopeful that we will be transformed and different, because I agree with you. Yeah, that's how God brings good out of all this evil.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of different areas of LA, obviously, look, we're in the Westwood, Century City, Beverly Hills area. But even in our more privileged area, we have the issues that we're speaking about of Feed My Poor. What about your other colleagues, Catholic priests around Los Angeles? Remind me, how many Catholics in the LA area?
There's 5 million Catholics in LA. There's a lot. 290 churches. Wow. So we're big. We're the largest church area in the United States. Number 2 would be New York. So we got a lot of Catholics out here.
And what does that look like in terms of LA County coming together? Has things been done, or is it just people sort of in their own bubble still? What does that look like?
Everybody's kind of everybody has their own little dynamic, how they're dealing with things. And a big thing, I think everybody's facing this in the faith business, is there's no more collections. So a lot of churches and church schools, church educational institutions, this is going to be a tough year again until we get that vaccine and get back to normal. How do we have a budget? How do we stay solvent without our primary form of revenue, which is a collection? So I think particularly the underserved areas, the poor areas, they're going to be more have more angst, more stress than, let's say, us on the west side.
Got it. And what about schools? I know you have a Catholic school connected to your church. What does that look like over the last few months, and what are they thinking going forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously distance learning, and I was a former teacher. I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, we all want the kids in a classroom with their peers learning, but this is what we have to do for now. So again, my thing is, let's just get through this year and next year until we get a vaccine. But I think it's a big sacrifice, because it's very non-ideal to have this distance learning thing.
And what about the needs of your community? Do you think those have changed spiritually since the Safer at Home order was implemented? Were people calling you for X, Y, Z, but now they're calling you for A, B, and C? I know on our end, life cycle, specifically end of life issues, have been extremely, extremely difficult. It's not the norm. Members with elderly parents in nursing homes were, number one, not able to see them. And then if they, God forbid, got sick, could not see them in the hospital before their end of life. Have you faced any of that? And what does that look like?
Well, it's interesting. We really haven't had a lot of those requests or blessing those that are, elderly or getting ready to pass, or even funerals. We haven't had that. Again, it's more like I talked about, In the beginning, it's more the isolation, the fear, the unknown, psychological stress. That's for a lot of people. That's if you would say, how is it changed? You're really ministering to someone that's rattled, and they need to be told, God's in control. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. We just got to get through this together. Like kind of like the soundbite of all the TV shows. We're in this together.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people think I'm alone in the universe and God has forsaken me and I'm in trouble. And we'd have to tell people, no, you're going to be okay.
I actually think it's interesting to speak about doubt as well. That sometimes, even though we know, God willing, we will be okay, it's also important to mark that right now we are not okay. We just celebrated our high school seniors this past Shabbat, and it was amazing because, they obviously didn't have all their graduations. They're missing the moment that they really have been looking forward to for many years. And the sermon was about, even though a lot of other things will be okay, at this moment, it's also okay to mourn for what you are missing. Even though it might seem trite and small in somebody else's eyes, for you, that's a big moment.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that we have to own that, because it is a little death going on here in all of our lives, even though we may not literally have the COVID and dying. Part of our lifestyle, our California lifestyle, there's a death there. We can't go out and just do whatever we want anymore. So I agree with you. We have to own that and kind of mourn it and grieve it.
And then how do, just in terms of the hierarchy of the church, from the archbishop and things like that, how does it work? Who do you look towards guidance? Synagogues were a bit more independent, but we talk to our friends and colleagues around the country, making sure that we are, on the same page. What does that look like in the Catholic Church locally, nationally, and even going up towards the Pope? And we'll talk about the Pope in a minute.
Sure. Yeah. So the Catholic Church has a real strict hierarchy. There's bishops all over the world, and they're in charge of a region. So the Bishop of Los Angeles is named Jose Gomez. He's a Mexican national. And because this is such a big place, he's an archbishop. That just means he's head of a large area. And all the bishops answer to the Pope. The Pope in Rome is the head bishop, if you will. But each country has its own conference of bishops. So as it turns out, our Archbishop, Jose Gomez, is also the president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. So he has a national point of view. So we're getting direction from him, and we know it's very in concert of, what the American church is doing and the expectations. So he's really just staying close to LA County officials, and we're not going to open until Mayor Garcetti and others say it's safe. We're not going to, you hear that in some parts of the country, that some pastors are really saying, we got the First Amendment and we can do this. That's not going to happen with our Archbishop, because he wants to cooperate, with city officials and not oppose them.
Looks like we're in the same boat here on Wilshire Boulevard. Must be the neighborhood. I think it goes to what I said before, the pikuach nefesh of saving a life. How about weddings? What have you faced with that? Are people interested in, or, are weddings being postponed? What is the suggestion based on Priest Catholic Church in terms of?
Great question. So obviously a part of worship is celebration. We're celebrating God's love for us. And then celebrations like a wedding, they're basically being postponed, which is kind of sad. Because I know for couples, especially the brides, this is a huge day. And you talked about that grieving and owning it. So all of our couples, we're asking them to just postpone it until the fall, when hopefully we can open up and have a service. But yes, that's, I would say, probably the most sad part, because the brides and the couples, they're just so joyful, and we're having to tell them, sorry, we can't do it right now. So that's not easy.
Whew, nothing's easy. I just can't believe that we're actually having this conversation when we started our good work last year. Father Ed often calls it covenant work. I love that definition, because I think it's exactly what we need to do. And we were on a roll. And I remember, like you said, when Martha's Kitchen shut down, we were asking what to do. And I'm glad that Feed My Poor is really started up, and we look forward to being involved with that as well. And just several weeks ago. Actually, one of our last programs here at the synagogue before we had to shut down was with Church of the Good Shepherd, and with Rabbi Skorka, who's good friends of the Pope, actually. And we had over 300 people. We had 6 priests. We had more priests than rabbis in the synagogue that night. It was amazing. But that's the type of work that I think we are excited to do. But in this time, really also is important to continue those relationships, not just look inside our buildings, but also look outside those buildings as well. So I think to conclude, maybe some words of advice from down the street to our community as we continue on this way and, God willing, are together in person soon.
So I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Some advice for
who? Just some words of conclusion and words of blessing to not just our community, but whoever's watching out in the virtual world as well.
Yeah, I would just say, as a former coach of, sports, I would just, sports psychology, I would just say to the troops, we're going to get through this together. It's not just a soundbite. God loves us, and God is allowing this so we can learn some lessons, but let's just hang in there and follow the guidelines. And soon enough, when we get that vaccine, we can kind of go back to normal. So until then, let's just be disciplined and hang in there. And I wanted to send a lot of love out there to everybody in the Sinai Temple.
Thank you to Father Ed, Church of the Good Shepherd, the same to your community. Obviously, we do our drive-bys and we see you, but we are looking forward to feeling your presence once again. Again, we want to thank Father Ed from Church of the Good Shepherd of Beverly Hills for joining us this morning. This is, again, not the start of our friendship, but the midst of our friendship, and we look forward to continuing that and taking it to more sacred levels in the days, months, and years ahead as well. Again, we want to wish everybody a wonderful day. Please stay safe, and we look forward to continuing our sacred conversations in the weeks ahead. Thank you so much, Father Ed.
Thank you, Rabbi. God bless.